believe it. And I have actually been getting that a lot. So that's who I'm fighting for, Mr. Speaker. Those good Canadians, and I will fight for them every single day without stop, relentlessly, Mr. Speaker. So thank you very much, and we'll pick this up again next time. Thank you.
Well done.
Statements by members. Déclaration de député. L'honorable député, the honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canada has the largest number of lakes in the world and makes up approximately 7% of the world's renewable fresh water, Mr. Speaker. The recent federal budget has made it very clear. The government cares about our rivers and our lakes and our watershed areas. For the very first time ever, Canada is establishing a national water agency. This new agency will be headquartered in the city of Winnipeg, where water science, the quality of water, floods and droughts will be studied and acted on in every way. Not only will it create good middle-class jobs in Winnipeg, but more importantly, Mr. Speaker, it shows that this government is serious about protecting and managing the critical natural resource of water. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Medicine Hat, Carson Warner.
Mr. Speaker, our Collective Journey is a non-profit organization operating in Medicine Hat that provides a range of services to support individuals who are facing challenges related to addiction and recovery. Their personalized support, guidance, and accountability helps individuals build resiliency through conversations and goal setting around stress management, mindfulness, and self-care, establishing a strong foundation for long-term success. Through the recovery coaching, resiliency building, podcast, and community meetings, our Collective Journey provides individuals with the resources and support they need to overcome obstacles and build a healthy, fulfilling life. They believe that everyone deserves the opportunity to achieve their goals, live their best life, and are committed to helping individuals do just that. Thank you, our Collective Journey, for your incredible work that you are doing to improve the lives of those struggling with addictions and recovery. And unlike other jurisdictions in Canada, our Collective Journey are hope dealers, not dope dealers.
L'honorable député de Lac-Saint-Louis.
Irene Lambert is taking early retirement at 92 after years of dedicated service to the community. Visually impaired, but always undaunted, Irene has advocated tirelessly for people with disabilities, including as a member of the provincial commission that led to Quebec's legislation on the rights of people with disabilities. Her efforts also resulted in Bell Canada offering free directory assistance for those with a print disability. Irene did not stop there, however. Among her most meaningful accomplishments was being a founding member of Montreal's Low Vision Self-Help Association, and a driving force behind the organization for over 30 years. On May 10th, Irene Lambert will be stepping down from the board of directors of the Low Vision Self-Help Association with a well-deserved sense of a job well done. I ask all members to join me in thanking Irene for her pioneering role as a community builder who has steadfastly promoted the values of volunteerism, activism, and inclusiveness.
Thank you, Irene.
L'honorable député de Repentigny.
L'humain et la justice.
Humanity and justice are at the heart of Joanne Vandal's life. She led Équijustice Lanaudière Sud for 36 years, invested with a mission to make our society more fair and just. She was never afraid to think out of the box. She did so through an exceptional involvement in advocating for citizen mediation and restorative justice. She worked outside traditional processes to ensure that victims received redress for the abuse they suffered and that offenders took responsibility for the harm they caused. At the same table, victims and abusers who wanted to go through the process met with her. Faced with horrific situations ranging from sexual assault to homicide, Joanne successfully led people to healing, always while caring for others. Her former colleagues see in her a sensitive she-wolf who cares for her pack, and they're proud to take up the torch. Joanne, enjoy your well-deserved retirement. Thank you for your decades of service, and thank you for preparing the next generation so very well.
The honourable member for Vancouver Granville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today marks World Ovarian Cancer Day. And so on this day, I'd like to share the story of a constituent of mine who fought this debilitating disease that takes more than 5 Canadian women every single day. Erin Baird is an ovarian cancer survivor and the proud chair of Ovarian Cancer Canada's Board of Directors. She was first diagnosed when she was 36 weeks pregnant with her daughter Edie. She underwent 3 rounds of chemo and 25 radiation treatments. A few years later, she was diagnosed with stage 1 ovarian cancer for the second time. Seeing how awful the statistics are for women with this disease, she felt a responsibility to use her voice and her skills to ensure other women are diagnosed early. The treatment protocol that Erin received was unique and not available in other parts of the world. Erin is a fighter, and her success was aided by Ovarian Cancer Canada's groundbreaking research being done across the country. Investing in ovarian cancer research in Canada saved Erin's life. Erin and women like her inspire us all to do what we can to advance the fight against ovarian cancer. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Mr. Speaker, on May 29th, Albertans will go to the polls in a provincial election. Since 2015, Alberta has faced 2 problems. First was the accidental election of Rachel Notley and the Socialist Alberta NDP. The next was the election of that Liberal Prime Minister and the parties that enable him. Both of these political parties have brought about devastation on Alberta. Their high-tax, anti-energy, and inherently flawed economic policies have led to hundreds of thousands of jobs being lost, billions of lost investment, and a deterioration of the Alberta advantage. In 2019, Alberta dealt with problem number 1 and returned Conservatives to power in Edmonton, and despite many challenges, my province has once again been moving forward. On May 29th, Albertans have a choice. Elect the Alberta NDP, who along with the federal Liberals and their NDP partners in Ottawa will punish Alberta, or elect a strong, united Conservative majority. Mr. Speaker, I'm voting for my local UCP candidate. We can then move to dealing with problem number 2, and that's getting rid of those tired corrupt...
Member for Scarborough-Guildwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 2007, I joined Results Canada in a delegation to Kenya. Far from being a junket, it was a slum tour. Some of the biggest slums in the world are in Nairobi. What I remember most is the smell of open sewers and the chronic overcrowding. Results Canada is a grassroots NGO composed of volunteers dedicated to reducing poverty and advancing human rights. Today, we are joined in Ottawa by volunteers from Results Canada, including constituents from Scarborough-Guildwood, who have come to Ottawa as part of the national conference Game Changers for Achieving the Global Goals for 2030. Please join me in thanking all of Results Canada volunteers today with the real game changers who would like to end extreme poverty. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Humber River Black Creek.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The Canadian Consumer Specialty Products Association recently celebrated its 65th anniversary, marking over 6 decades of advocacy and representation for the consumer specialty products industry in Canada. Founded in 1958, CCSPA has been instrumental in ensuring that Canadian consumers have access to safe and innovative products, ranging from household cleaners and personal care items to pest control and automotive products. CCSPA has played a vital role in shaping regulations and standards for the industry to promote best practices and improve product safety. The association has also provided valuable support to its members, including market research, networking opportunities, and educational programs. During the pandemic, it worked tirelessly to ensure Canadians had access to disinfectants, wipes, hand sanitizers, and cleaning products. But a shout out to Shannon Coombs, who has been the president of CCSPA for more than 25 years, shaping the best consumer product landscape for Canadians. The 65th anniversary is a significant milestone. Congratulations to everyone. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Mill Woods.
Mr. Speaker, since Saturday, Alberta has been in a state of emergency due to raging wildfires. There are currently 108 wildfires across the province, including 28 that are out of control, 20 being held, and 60 under control. Nearly 30,000 Albertans have been evacuated from their homes, and sadly, some have already lost their homes. The hot, dry, and windy conditions continue to produce extreme burning conditions, and a fire ban remains in place for most of Alberta. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the firefighters who are working tirelessly day and night to keep our communities safe while risking their own lives, including firefighters who arrived yesterday from Ontario and Quebec to help the efforts. We also extend our gratitude to all emergency personnel, volunteers, and everyone who is out there helping their fellow Albertan. Mr. Speaker, our prayers are with them during this challenging time, and we remain Alberta strong.
The honourable member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker, as President of the Canada-Europe Parliamentary Association, I rise to highlight two significant dates for our European friends. Today, May 8th, Victory in Europe Day, and tomorrow, May 9th, Europe Day. Both dates reflect on and celebrate European unity and spirit. Nazi Germany's unconditional surrender on May 8th, 1945 meant an end to nearly 6 years of war in Europe and millions of lives lost. 5 years later, on May 9th, 1950, the Schuman Declaration was proposed to set out a new form of political cooperation in Europe, which would make war between Europe's nations unthinkable. For this, we celebrate Europe Day. Upholding our shared values of peace, democracy, and unity has never been more important, Mr. Speaker. In the face of ongoing unprovoked Russian aggression against Ukraine, Canada and Europe remain steadfast in their support for the sovereignty of Ukraine and the freedom of the Ukrainian people. As President Ursula von der Leyen stated in this House, the history of Canada's and Europe's democracies is tied together. Mr. Speaker, we have seen what's possible when Canada and Europe work together. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Red Deer Mountain View.
Mr. Speaker, this Liberal government and this Prime Minister is plagued with scandal and ethics violations. Canadians are struggling to make ends meet because of his inflationary deficits and carbon tax. Mr. Speaker, the good news for Canadians is the next Conservative government has a plan to bring home lower prices. We will end this government's inflationary deficits and scrap the carbon tax. Conservatives will bring home powerful paychecks for Canadians by lowering taxes and clawbacks to reward hard-working Canadians. Mr. Speaker, led by the Leader of the official opposition, Conservatives will bring home freedom from foreign interference because this Prime Minister won't. Canadians know our leader and our caucus stand for the common sense of the common people, united for our common home, Canada.
Well said. The honourable member for Edmonton Manning.
Mr. Speaker, with Liberal taxes sparking rising inflation and food prices out of control, today's Canadians have never had it worse. Forget about a vacation. Most people cannot even afford a staycation. That's right. The Prime Minister doesn't have the same worries. He's taken 5 foreign vacations this year alone, including Live It Up in New York City with celebrities and selfies, and his $80,000 vacation in Jamaica paid by the Trudeau Foundation donors. Canadians who can only dream of such a luxury are paying thousands for his security and travel costs. After 8 years of his out-of-touch Prime Minister and his taxes, life costs more, work doesn't pay, house costs have doubled, crime is increasing, and Canadians are out of money. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Here.
L'honorable député de Sherbrooke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is Nurses Week. This is an excellent opportunity to admire them for the work they do in Sherbrooke, Quebec, and across the country to take care of Canadians. The COVID-19 pandemic highlighted the demanding working conditions that our guardian angels face. They supported us through this difficult time and sacrificed their physical and mental health to do so. The Government of Canada continues to be there for caregivers, including with the new federal health plan. It provides almost $50 billion in new funding over 10 years, including $7.8 billion as part of ongoing bilateral agreements on home care, mental health, and long-term care. Even with continued funding, we must recognize that a lot remains to be done to improve conditions for everyone who works in the system. I'd like to acknowledge all the nurses of the Estrie Integrated University Health and Social Services Centre and the Sherbrooke University Medical Centre. We owe them a great debt of gratitude.
Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, George Whitney was a dedicated civil servant, a committed conservationist, and one of the most interesting, most curious, and most entertaining people I have ever met. Amongst his many roles, George was the superintendent of Algonquin Provincial Park and the director of fisheries for the Government of Ontario. His last position was with the Canadian International Development Agency in Zimbabwe, and it was in Zimbabwe where George and I met for the first time. People may have wondered how our friendship developed. He was 30 years my senior, and we had very different lives. And sometimes, Mr. Speaker, the world is a funny place, and I like to believe that George saw in me a kindred spirit. Someone who is interested in our world, interested in wild places, interested in creating a world that was more equal for all. George, his highly entertaining brother Paul, our dear friend Scott, and I would spend many a nights talking about our global exploits, arguing about what made the perfect dog, which of course is the Rhodesian Ridgeback, and scheming about how we would fix the world. The world is a less interesting place without you in it, Mr. Whitney.
L'honorable député de Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte.
Monsieur le Président, c'était...
Mr. Speaker, it was the Liberal Party convention over the weekend. Oh, you can hear the Liberals, who seem to have better things to do than to discuss proposals. On Saturday morning, thousands of delegates could have been talking about inflation, the housing crisis, the fight against global warming, Chinese interference. Oh, no, sorry, not Chinese interference. But they could have discussed top Liberal priorities. But no, not a peep. Barely a tenth of the delegates were there. But where were they, Mr. Speaker? They were glued to the TV. Liberals, hand on heart, were watching King Charles III be crowned, and the Prime Minister's trying to make us believe that the new King of Canada has the same priorities as Canadians. I wonder if one of his priorities was the abolition of the monarchy, because in Quebec, and even in Canada, there is a consensus. And the Liberals would see it if they didn't have a tear in their eye, glued to their little screens, watching the royal carriage go by.
The honourable member for Saskatoon-Grasswood.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. People in my home province of Saskatchewan are struggling more than ever to make ends meet. And this Prime Minister is oblivious. Canadians are feeling the pressure to keep the lights on and food on the table, while this government continues to raise taxes on gas, heat, and food. This Prime Minister has squandered taxpayer money, taking lavish foreign holidays that most of us could never afford. His $80,000 gifted vacation from the Trudeau Foundation donors cost more than an annual salary for many families in this country. Taxpayers are on the hook for these foreign holidays, while most Canadians simply take modest holidays, like camping out or visiting their grandparents. Canadians are facing tough times because of this government's irresponsible fiscal management.
L'honorable député de Sudbury.
I am pleased to recognize National Mining Week. Mining activity takes place across the country and creates 665,000 direct and indirect jobs. In 2021, it contributed $90 billion to Canada's GDP. Canada is a global mining power thanks to our world-class people, deposits, and environmental practices. In a net zero economy, this industry can reach even higher. That is why we made a historic commitment of $3.8 billion to implement the critical mineral strategy. This includes $1.5 billion to establish critical minerals value chains, another $1.5 billion to unlock projects, the doubling of the mineral exploration tax credit, $144 million for R&D, and more. In last month's federal budget, we built on Canada's competitive position, committing the clean tax credit to increase domestic mining and processing. Mr. Speaker, the Government of Canada is fully seized with capturing the opportunities before us.
Bravo! Before going on to question period, I'd like to make a statement on maintaining order and decorum in the House following the point of order raised during the sitting of May 4th. The rules and practices governing order and decorum are intended, in part, to ensure that proceedings are conducted in a civil, courteous, and respectful manner. In particular, members are expected to address each other through the chair and to avoid making any offensive or disruptive remarks. For example, stating directly or indirectly that a colleague is a liar or has lied is unacceptable. Le maintien de l'ordre et du décorum.
Maintaining order and decorum in the House is a responsibility that has been delegated to chair occupants. This is a task of great importance whose enforcement relies on striking a fine balance between the nearly unlimited freedom of speech in the House and complying with Standing Order 18, which provides, and I quote, "No member shall use offensive words against either House or against any member thereof." End of quote.
When the chair is asked to rule on alleged unparliamentary language, it takes various criteria into account, including the member's tone, manner, and intent, as well as the order in the chamber that follows the remarks. Chair occupants always try to apply the rules consistently. What may appear inconsistent to some is often the result of the fact that every situation is different. As a result, as House of Commons Procedures and Practices, 3rd edition, note on page 624, and I quote, "Language deemed unparliamentary one day may not necessarily be deemed unparliamentary on another day," end quote. Lorsque la présidence juge que le langage...
When the chair finds that a member has used unparliamentary language, the chair may ask the member to withdraw their words and apologize. If the member declines to do so, the chair may then refuse to recognize them or name them and expel them from the chamber for the remainder of the sitting.
Stated during the events of Thursday, May 4th, the chair wishes to reiterate that it will use all the powers at its disposal. To be quite clear, any remarks the chair deems unparliamentary will be required to be withdrawn immediately and accompanied by a full and proper apology. If a member refuses to comply, the chair will cease to recognize them until further notice.
As explained in my statement on November 3rd, 2022, which can be found on page 9298 of the debates, and I quote, "Exchanges between members of the House are sometimes heated and intense, but the chair expects everyone to conduct themselves in a dignified manner and to choose their words carefully." End of quote.
Fin de la citation. À l'approche du mois de juin.
As we approach the month of June, when the parliamentary workload is consistently very heavy, I encourage all members to contribute to the proceedings in a civilized manner in accordance with our rules.
Each have the primary responsibility for maintaining order and decorum. To help members do so, the chair will use in full the powers it has been granted by the members themselves. I thank the members for their attention and their collaboration. Oral questions. Question orale, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Finance Minister admitted a few months ago that the deficit was fanning the flames of inflation. And a bit later, she announced that she would never eliminate the deficits that cause inflation. But there was a grain of common sense in the Liberal Party when they called for a plan to eliminate the deficit and stop fueling inflation. But the Prime Minister admitted that that motion was shot down. When will the government put an end to inflationary deficits? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, what Liberals said at our convention was that we're the optimistic party. We're the party that believes in Canada. We are a political party that understands the importance of investing in Canadians. When it comes to fiscal matters, Canada's credit rating, AAA credit rating, was upheld after our budget was tabled.
Minister, but he doesn't have the courage to stand up and answer it. But his finance minister said just a few months ago that deficits add oil to the inflationary fire. A few weeks later, she announced she would continue running deficits forever. There were a few courageous Liberals who showed up in a minority to their Congress to push forward a motion which would have required this government eliminate these deficits. But it was voted down, sadly, Mr. Speaker. Will the Prime Minister have the courage to stand up and answer? Will he get rid of his inflationary deficits, or does he believe that budgets will balance themselves?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I am really glad to hear the Leader of the Opposition recognize the courage of the Liberal Party. And indeed, the Liberal Party showed itself to be courageous and optimistic this weekend. We showed we are the party that believes in Canada. We are the party that understands the importance of investing in Canadians.
Yes,
and you know
indeed.
what, Mr. Speaker? The economic results show that that works. Canada's AAA credit rating was reaffirmed by S&P after I tabled our budget. Our economy grew by 2.5% in the first quarter, and we've added 900,000 jobs since the pandemic.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Well, the Prime Minister was so courageous, he wouldn't be afraid to stand up and answer a question, would he? If the Prime Minister was so courageous, he might throw out Beijing's agent. A week after we found out, as a nation, that this agent had been threatening the family of a Canadian MP for a vote that he cast in this House, the Prime Minister hasn't thrown him out. In fact, he extends credentials to that agent, allowing him to operate with impunity from our laws here in our country. Will the Prime Minister show some courage, answer the question, and kick this agent out today?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we're talking about serious issues, and I'd like us to all be serious for a minute. In this House, we disagree about many things. We disagree about childcare. We disagree about a price on pollution. We disagree about investing in Canadian industrial policy. But there is one thing that I know every single member of this House in every party agrees on, and that is the sanctity of democracy in Canada and around the world. And it is simply wrong to suggest in any way any member of this House is not a faithful, patriotic, democratic Canadian.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister believes that he should stand up and say so and kick out this operative from Canada. So far, he's been hiding. He's hiding from answering my questions, but he's hiding from the regime in Beijing. This government's now saying that they cannot kick out this operative, even though he threatened the family of a Canadian MP, because they're afraid of the consequences that Beijing will impose on the Liberal government that it has supported for so long. Will the Prime Minister finally put this country first, bring home security to all MPs, and kick this operative out, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition, if you were paying attention, would have heard that my colleague, the Minister of Global Affairs, convened last week the Chinese ambassador to make it abundantly clear that we will never tolerate foreign interference. This is consistent with the strong position that Canada has taken when it comes to the conventions around what is legitimate diplomatic activity and what is not. And we will continue to put in place the authorities, the people, the resources, and the transparency to defend our democratic institutions. I just wonder why it is the Leader of the Conservative Party continues to politicize an issue that is a Canadian issue.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Because we want to protect democracy here in Canada, and the Prime Minister didn't have the courage to answer the questions. But his minister said the government will never accept foreign interference, but that's precisely what they're doing right now, Mr. Speaker. If the government and the Prime Minister want to protect our democracy, they should expel the operative responsible for threats against a member here in Canada. Does the Prime Minister have the courage to expel that operative now? The Honourable Minister.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, last week the Foreign Affairs Minister met with the Chinese ambassador to raise legitimate issues, and when there are examples where activities go beyond what's allowed, what's legal, Canada will always condemn that. And we have already promoted transparency and the defense of democratic institutions. The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. Mr. Speaker, let's talk about the Century Initiative, a proposal to triple Canada's population through immigration to reach 100 million people by 2100, or the turn of the century. By the very admission of its creators, the initiative leaves out the future of French, the political clout of Quebec, or the First Nations. It's strictly economic. The Liberals have never said they were on board with this idea, but their immigration targets for 2023 to 2025 are already in line with the initiative's objectives. Mr. Speaker, if this government is making this Century Initiative its immigration policy, can they at least say so publicly? The Honourable Minister of Immigration. Mr. Speaker, it's essential for all members here to understand that we need to increase the number of newcomers, and we can protect French at the same time all across the country. That is possible, clearly, because last year, for the first time in Canadian history, we reached a target of 4.4% of new arrivals and Francophone newcomers as well. It's very important because these are the highest numbers we've ever reached in Canadian history, and it's a good thing for minority communities. The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, the Century Initiative is purely economic. On February 1st, its co-founder, Dominic Barton, a former McKinsey executive, was asked if he'd thought about the future of French, and he said the focus was only on the economy. They weren't thinking about the social context. They were thinking about productivity. Mr. Speaker, not a single word about French in the 88 pages of the initiative. So since it disregards the future of French, what other studies on this subject did the government rely on before adopting the initiative's immigration targets? Will they release those studies? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I have good news for my colleague. It's myself and our government who make the immigration policy decisions for this country, not Dominic Barton. And that's very important, because our government's perspective is economic, social, and democratic. It's essential to take all those factors into account, because when we use those factors, we make good decisions for the country. Last year, we protected the democratic influence of Francophones all across the country, including and especially those in minority communities.
CSIS informed Canadians and this government that multiple members of this House have been targeted by foreign interference. All parliamentarians need assurance that their safety, their family's safety, and their freedom of expression are not threatened. And Canadians need to know that their vote counts and that our democratic process is free of foreign interference. The government needs to assure Canadians they're acting on these serious allegations. Let's start with some transparency. Have all MPs impacted by interference been fully notified by this government?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I share the concerns of my colleague, and that is why last week I tabled an annual report of CSIS, which illustrated that they had provided briefings to 49 federal parliamentarians, and we will continue to provide the support that is needed for every member in this chamber to be able to do their job secure in the knowledge that they are representing their communities in a way that is safe. Mr. Speaker, this is a government that will continue to do everything that is necessary to defend our democratic institutions, and including the people that work in them.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont La Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, I imagine that, like a lot of people, you're a bit of a foodie and you like to eat well. I also imagine you want to know what goes on your plate. But you should know that because of the Liberal government, this will no longer be possible. The Liberals have given in to the financial interests of the industry, which wants to secretly introduce new GMOs into our food. There's no such thing as voluntary transparency. It's an illusion. Will the Liberals have the courage to stand up to big business and defend the rights of consumers? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. Of course, we have made new rules to protect the organic food sector all across Canada. And of course, we will continue working with industry because it's a growing industry.
For Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, when something happens once, it's a mistake. When something happens twice, it's a pattern. And when something happens 3 or 4 or 5 times, it's a decision. The Prime Minister and members of his party have all perpetuated the myth that the member for Wellington Halton Hills knew about the threats against his family because he was briefed 2 years ago. It's false. At some point, someone made a conscious decision to gaslight Canadians. Will someone on the other side have the courage to stand up and apologize for the disgusting attempt to discredit a member of this House?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Speaker, as my colleague across the aisle knows full well, both myself and the Prime Minister directly reached out to the member for Wellington Halton Hills to share the concerns with regards to the reports around foreign interference and his families. We offered him a briefing and we will continue to provide that support going forward. Mr. Speaker, what's also important is that while the Conservatives talk tough when it comes to national security, they never back it up. They cut nearly $1 billion out of the national security apparatus. They've stood in the way of the additional tools to our national security apparatus, which are there to defend the members of this chamber. If they're serious about uniting behind the cause of defending the democracy, they'll start doing it today.
Member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, he wasn't briefed 2 years ago on it. They know it, and they are purposely victim blaming. He is gaslighting Canadians. This is about a member of this House serving his country and the safety of his family in the balance. It's appalling that the Liberals are tarnishing this MP, but it's even worse that the diplomat who perpetuated it is still here with the rights that even Canadians don't have because it was given to him by that government. If there are no consequences, it'll just happen again. The diplomat needs to go back to Beijing, and it needs to happen now. Will they do it today?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Speaker, and I first want to say there was a lot of heat in the House last week about this issue and not a lot of light. I think that what we all on this side of the House want to do is express our concern for the member for Wellington Halton Hills and for every Canadian who could be the subject, the target of any interference from China, from Russia, from any other country in the world. We will continue to take the steps to ensure that MPs are informed, that Canadians are informed, and that we have a safe and secure democracy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Brantford Brant.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister is really trying hard to save face after his complete failure to protect our democracy, Canadians and members of this House from intimidation by the Beijing dictatorship. And last Friday, he doubled down and blames and attacks the credibility of the member for Wellington Halton Hills. The Prime Minister claimed his office had not been briefed, that he knew nothing about this until recently. Will the Prime Minister stop spreading this categorically false narrative and finally expel this Beijing agent today?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the only falsehoods that are being spread today is the outrageous suggestion that the members of the government on this side of the chamber have no care or regard for the member for Wellington and Halton Hills. Nothing could be further from the truth, Mr. Speaker. That is why we're continuing to support him, and we'll support all members when it comes to doing their jobs so that it is free from foreign interference. And the Conservatives need to stop politicizing this issue. That simply plays into the hands of foreign interference. We need to be united in defending our democracy, and we can only do that work successfully if we do it together.
Honourable Member for Brantford Brant.
Fact of the matter, Mr. Speaker, is Canadians do not believe this Prime Minister, and most assuredly this Minister. Canada's spy agency did in fact notify this government 2 years ago regarding Beijing's threat to a member of this House. Even the Prime Minister's own National Security Advisor confirmed that her office had received this information in 2021. Enough of the smoke and mirrors. Will this Prime Minister apologize for deliberately misleading this House, be a leader for once, stand up for the security of all Canadians, and finally expel that Beijing agent?
I just want to mention and make sure that everyone is clear is if you're misleading someone, you're doing it unintentionally. But if you're deliberately misleading, that is not acceptable language. I'm sure it was an error on the member for the...
That's unacceptable right there.
I'm sorry?
That's unacceptable.
I'm sorry? As I was saying before I was rudely interrupted, I just want to remind everyone there's certain language that is not allowed in the chamber, and deliberately misleading is not allowed. The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for reminding our colleagues in the Conservative Party about that principle, because in all candor, the only way that we are going to be able to do the work of defending our institutions is if we rid ourselves of the kind of partisanship and politicization which has been plaguing this subject now for weeks. It should be abundantly clear that if we want to protect our democratic institutions and the people that work in them, including every member in this chamber and their families, that we must do that together. This government has put in place new authorities and transparencies. Let's get behind the cause of defending it so we can have real debates that are rooted in our democratic principles.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. What an embarrassing answer, Mr. Speaker. A member of this House and his family have been targeted by an intimidating diplomat from Beijing after a vote in this House. The events took place 2 years ago, and the MP was only informed last week. Since then, the Liberals have been in a panic to save face, Mr. Speaker. Instead of supporting our colleague, they pointed the finger at him. Who did this? The member for Kingston and the Islands and the member for Winnipeg North. Worse still, the member for Papineau and Prime Minister, who should have known, claims the opposition member knew. Are all Liberal ministers okay with defending Beijing at the expense of a Canadian MP and his family? The Honourable Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. Mr. Speaker, all ministers of our government, and in fact all members in this place, should agree that we should work together to protect our democratic institutions and to make sure that all members in this place, including our friend from Wellington, Halton Hills, are able to do their work as MPs, free from foreign interference. That's always been this government's position. We put in place measures that did not previously exist under the previous government, and we will continue to take every opportunity to strengthen them. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. They can't continue what they haven't even started. The Prime Minister did nothing. The Prime Minister's office did nothing. The National Security Advisor did nothing. The Minister of Foreign Affairs did nothing. No arrests, no expulsions. The message is clear. Canadian MPs can be intimidated by Beijing. This Prime Minister will just turn a blind eye. The only real consequences, 2 MPs in this House were silenced for trying to stop this shameful Liberal disinformation. Why does the Prime Minister allow this bully to stay in Canada? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague is perhaps confused. The ones who did nothing to protect our democratic institutions against an existing threat of foreign meddling, that's on the current leader of the official opposition when he was a minister responsible for democratic institutions. Since we took office, we announced more steps to strengthen what we started in 2019 and 2021. We will continue to protect our democratic institutions. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, tripling the population of a country in 75 years? Well, there's no country in recent history that has done that. The Century Initiative deserves an adult and intelligent debate, but it's only to be expected that Quebecers would ask questions about this, but there's been no debate. The federal government seems to be going ahead anyway. The immigration targets set by Ottawa till 2025 already are in line with the initiative targets and go a little beyond. First, will the Liberals dissociate themselves from the Century Initiative, or are they confirming that this is our new immigration policy? The Honourable Minister. Immigration is essential to support our economy and our communities. It's important for everyone here to understand that it is possible to protect Francophone political influence in this country and increase the number of new arrivals at the same time. The members opposite know this, and it's up to the government of Quebec to set their own immigration levels, and the federal government sets levels for the rest of the country. We will continue to increase numbers to support our economy. It's a good thing for Canada, and it's a good thing for Quebec. The honourable member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Well, what a coincidence. The federal targets are the same as the Century Initiatives. This initiative is first and foremost about economic interests. Dominic Barton has confirmed that they didn't take anything else into account. They didn't think about the impact of tripling the population on the future of French, on Indigenous languages, on the political weight of either group. They didn't think about the housing shortage either. So if the Century Initiative is based on nothing more than economics, can the government prove that it has anything else to go by before setting its immigration levels? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker. As the members know, it's not up to me to defend the decisions of the Century Initiative. I defend our government's ideas and our immigration plan. The federal levels, that's my decision. It's a decision that takes into account economics, social factors, and in particular, increasing the number of newcomers, Francophone newcomers. Last year, we hit the target for the first time in Canadian history of 4.4% Francophone newcomers. That's a good thing, and I'm happy to be protecting and strengthening the French language. Oh, they meet their target once in 20 years and they pat themselves on the back for that? It's unthinkable tripling the population to 100 million people without public debate. That would transform Canada and Quebec behind closed doors with only the business community as people having a say. Immigration policies are public choices with real impacts, which should be democratic. But no one asked Quebecers nor Canadians what they thought of this. No one asked workers, community organizations, group responsibles for providing services to the public. Why should the business community have the first and the last word and the only word on this matter? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, my friend is on fire right now. In fact, it's up to the government of Quebec to make the decision on immigration levels for Quebec. If the Bloc thinks that the federal government is setting Quebec's levels, I have news for him. That's not how it works. It's important for him to understand. But I respect Quebec's jurisdiction, and I respect the terms of the deal with Quebec. But we have increased overall numbers. But at the same time, we've protected the French communities.
Mr. Speaker, this government has failed Canadians when it comes to foreign interference from Beijing. At least 8 police stations have been set up to monitor Canadians and their own soil. 11 MPs have had influence in either nomination or elections. And a sitting MP 2 years ago had his family intimidated by a Beijing operative in Toronto. Of all the inaction, the very least Canadians can expect is to have that operative kicked out of Canada. My question, Mr. Speaker, is when will he?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member for the question and to assure every member of this House that we take this situation extremely seriously, as we have been doing with foreign interference for many years. We will continue to look at the situation as we have heard it. We will continue to do due diligence, and the minister will act with the right decision at the right time. This House needs to hear that. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Bay of Quinte.
Well, Mr. Speaker, perhaps that minister should convene some courage. I misspoke. I mentioned one MP whose family was intimidated. The Globe and Mail actually reported it was MPs, plural, which should shake every MP in this House to the core. There's a saying in sports, leaders anticipate, losers react, and this government is not even reacting. So much so that the agents in Beijing wrote that they don't even care about the repercussions because there won't be any. Canadians deserve a government that will stand up for them. When will they get it?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Again, Mr. Speaker, let me assure every member of this House that there are always repercussions if anybody breaks the law, if anybody goes outside their Vienna Convention responsibilities. Canada will continue to work to ensure that Canadians are safe, that members of this Parliament are safe as well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well, member for Barrie Springwater, Oro-Medonte.
Mr. Speaker, 2 years ago, the Canadian Security Intelligence Service detected that a member of Parliament and his family were being targeted by an operative for Beijing in response to a vote in this House of Commons. We know that CSIS informed the National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister and the relevant departments at least 2 years ago. The Liberal government is now blaming CSIS for their own failure and inaction, and have yet to expel any diplomats from Canada. Why is the Prime Minister allowing this Beijing operative to continue his interference campaign on Canadian soil?
Oh. The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our government always has and always will stand up for democracy in Canada and around the world. We stood up for democracy when we supported the brave people of Ukraine with Operation Unifier. We stood up for democracy when we expelled 4 Russian diplomats after the deplorable nerve agent attack in the UK. And we stood up for democracy, Mr. Speaker, when we honored our extradition treaty with the U.S. and detained Meng Wanzhou despite unacceptable bullying by the government of China. We will always stand up for democracy on this side of the House.
Member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, more than 30,000 Albertans have been forced from their homes due to wildfires, and there is a serious lack of information about where they can get help and when. In the absence of provincial leadership, can the Minister of Emergency Preparedness reassure the thousands of Albertans, particularly Indigenous and Métis communities that have been affected by wildfires, that the federal government will be there to help with the recovery and help with the rebuilding for as long as necessary?
Yes. Minister for Emergency Preparedness.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member from Edmonton Strathcona for a very important question, and there are literally thousands of Albertans who've been significantly impacted by the wildfires. But, Mr. Speaker, I also want to say that throughout the past weekend, I've been in regular contact with my counterpart in the Alberta Provincial Government, Minister Ellis. The Prime Minister and the Premier spoke earlier today, and about an hour ago, we received a request for assistance, for federal assistance from the province of Alberta. Mr. Speaker, everybody is working to help those people and make sure that the supports they are needed are there for them, to keep them safe and to make sure that we help them through this very difficult time. I take the opportunity as well to offer my very sincere thanks to all the first responders and firefighters who are doing an extraordinary job.
The Honourable Member for Vancouver Kingsway.
This National Nursing Week, we recognize the critical role nurses play in our communities. Last weekend, I traveled to Newfoundland and Labrador for important discussions on healthcare. I learned there are 750 vacant nursing positions in that province. 90% of nurses experience burnout, and 85% believe understaffing is creating unsafe conditions for patients. Nurses called on this government to include an emergency retention fund in this year's budget, but no help was delivered. When will the Liberals finally provide crucial support for Canada's nurses?
Well, Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We recognize Canadians are proud of our healthcare system, but it's not meeting expectations these days. That's why we made a $198.6 billion investment in our healthcare system back on February 7th. We expect that is going to help with things like the human resources and healthcare challenges that my colleague and friend has articulated so well. I'm glad that he's meeting with nurses, Mr. Speaker. I have been too. We recognize that it's a very, very challenging role in the healthcare system, and we've got to do more to make sure that they're supported. That includes retention, that includes better recruitment, but we've also got to take care of those who are working in that sector, because we recognize, especially now that it's Mental Health Week, that there are repercussions. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Mississauga, Erin Mills.
Mr. Speaker, in my riding of Mississauga, Erin Mills, I've heard from many constituents and small businesses about the need for urgent financial support. Can the Minister of Tourism and Associate Minister of Finance please update the House on how Budget 2023 is going to help Canadians in my riding of Mississauga, Erin Mills, and across Canada with reducing credit card fees for small businesses, incentives to build a greener economy, and support for student loan interests? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister for Tourism.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the honourable member for Mississauga, Erin Mills, for that fantastic question, for all her hard work on behalf of the residents of Mississauga. Mr. Speaker, our budget presents a prudent fiscal plan that supports Canadians, supports Canadian businesses, lowers costs, increases tax deductions, and lays the foundation for a prosperous economic future for generations to come. That is great news for Canadians, Mr. Speaker, but disappointingly, the Conservatives, just last week, voted against. And while their priority is on partisan games, Mr. Speaker, our priority will be on supporting Canadians.
Honourable member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is spreading misinformation that the member for Wellington Halton Hills had been briefed by CSIS 2 years ago that his family had been targeted by a Beijing diplomat. The Prime Minister knows this to be untrue. In fact, it was the Prime Minister who knew about it for 2 years, did nothing, and kept the member in the dark. Now that he is resorting to victim blaming, how much lower can the Prime Minister go?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, it never ceases to amaze me how absurd the suggestions can be in this chamber from the Conservative Party on this issue. Of course, we have regard for the member for Wellington and Halton Hills. Of course, we have regard for the safety and security for all members in this chamber so that we can exercise our constitutional responsibilities by representing our constituents and doing so free and clear from any foreign interference. That's why we are putting in place all of the authorities and the transparency that is necessary to do that. And it's far since past the time in which the Conservatives need to abandon their rhetoric on this and get behind the hard work, rolling up their sleeves so we can defend our democracy.
The Honourable Member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, for 2 years, the Prime Minister covered up that a Beijing diplomat targeted the family of the member for Wellington Halton Hills. Then, when it became public, he falsely claimed that he knew nothing about it. And now he is spreading misinformation in a disgraceful attempt to impugn the character of the member who is a victim of the Prime Minister's inaction. Will the Prime Minister show any level of decency? Will he apologize to the member and Canadians for this disgusting display?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives can shout all they want, but that won't detract from the work that this government is doing to defend our democracy. That won't detract from the work that we have done in setting up a committee of parliamentarians in which the Conservatives continue to play Jekyll and Hyde. 1 week they sit on it, the next week they don't. They need to abandon these types of political tactics and do the hard work, roll up their sleeves, make sure that, yes, we protect this chamber as a place that is sacred, where we can have debates in the interests of all Canadians. That's what the Conservatives need to do, not continue along the lines of this hopped-up rhetoric.
Member for Mission Matsky, Fraser Canyon.
Well, Mr. Speaker, rather than expel a diplomat who targeted an MP's family, this government did nothing for 2 years. Last week, the Prime Minister peddled a narrative that it was the member from Wellington Halton Hills who in fact knew and said nothing. Nobody in this chamber is debating that a Beijing official engaged in threats against a sitting member of this House. So the question is, when will the Prime Minister stop misleading Canadians to cover up for his failures and expel the Beijing diplomat today?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, I think it's really important to say no one is misleading the House in this matter. There are steps that need to be taken always if you are going to expel a diplomat. It is due process. You might say that we don't need to follow the rule of law. You don't need to say that on that side of the House. This side of the House, we will always do due diligence, follow the evidence, follow the rule of law, make the right decision at the right time. This House can be rest assured of that.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, on the weekend, 2 former Liberal ministers stated that all of Ottawa knew what was happening against the Conservative member for Wellington Halton Hills. And now, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is still repeating that he didn't know about it. So everyone in Ottawa knew but the Prime Minister? Mr. Speaker, as you know, I can say something about what I think about that. But I want to know is when is this government going to act in the interests of all Canadians and expel that so-called Beijing diplomat?
L'Honorable Ministre.
The Honourable Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague knows full well that we must take the right decisions at the right time. But what is also important, Mr. Speaker, to remember is that we are the only government who has taken foreign interference seriously. We have put measures in place. We strengthened those measures during the 2021 election, and obviously we are concerned by the situation that is being gone through by our colleague, and that is exactly why we gave further directives to our intelligence agencies. The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals have found a way during their convention to solve the matter of Chinese interference. Their solution is to forbid the media from talking about it. That is literally one of the resolutions adopted by the Liberals this weekend. For them, the problem wasn't that candidates were helped by China or that members were being threatened. No, the problem is that the medias were talking about it. This is shameful, and to get rid of the burden of Chinese interference, the Liberals have proposed a solution worthy of the Chinese Communist Party. Can the House guarantee that this solution will not be considered?
Secretary to the Minister of Canadian Heritage.
About the Liberal Party, Mr. Speaker, is that we can disagree on things. Our government has always and will always respect the independence of the press. Journalists need to be able to freely report the news as they see it. They need to be able to ask the tough questions and report on the facts as they see them. A free and independent press is fundamental to our democracy and guaranteed by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It's also the best defense against disinformation. Thank you, Mr.
Speaker. The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's because the motion said, that's not what the motion said. Last week, the Prime Minister blamed CSIS for having forgotten to inform the member for Wellington Halton Hills that he was being threatened. But that's false. The CSIS had told the Prime Minister's office in 2021. It is the senior advisor of the Prime Minister for security who confirmed it. Why is this important? Because once again, in the matter of Chinese interference, the Prime Minister is saying the opposite of the truth. And that's been the case since day one. He has no credibility to shed light on this topic, so when will we get a public, independent inquiry? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, as my colleague knows full well, we have appointed a special rapporteur who is independent. That is the Right Honourable David Johnston. He's been working on this already, and he is reviewing all of the issues that have come up in terms of our intelligence agencies. He has access to all the information he needs, and we are very eager before the end of month of May to hear his recommendations. To answer my colleague's question.
Cumberland Colchester.
Mr. Speaker, one of the Mass Casualty Commission's recommendations directly reflects the Liberal ban on firearms, Bill C-21. This bill added firearms without consultation and even used this tragedy to its advantage. The opposition was fierce. However, a revamped version has reared its ugly head. What we know clearly is the monster from this tragic event was neither a legal gun owner nor were his guns legal. In a recent op-ed, the authors state the focus should be on securing the border, providing mental health support, and diverting at-risk youth from gangs. When will the Prime Minister start addressing violent repeat offenders and stop attacking Grandpa Jaw, who owns a hunting rifle?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, respectfully, that's exactly what the government is doing. And last week, I was very proud to see that members of our caucus have put forward amendments to Bill C-21, which will strengthen the national ban, which the government put into place, on AR-15 style firearms, which have absolutely no legitimate recreational purpose in any of our communities, Mr. Speaker. It is only the Conservatives who continue to put forward policies that amount to legalizing AR-15 style firearms. That's the wrong path. They need to get behind Bill C-21 so we can save lives.
Well, member for Kenora.
Here we go, Mr. Speaker. The NDP Liberals are at it again. He wants to talk about saving lives, but Mr. Speaker, under his watch, we've seen a violent wave of crime across the country. Mr. Speaker, they have failed to fix the broken bail system. They are failing to address violent repeat offenders. What they're doing, Mr. Speaker, is bringing forward a confiscation plan that's only going to hurt hunters and sport shooters. In fact, I received a text this morning from Chief Rudy Turtle, a former NDP candidate, who told me that he is, quote, against any gun law that would impact our traditional practices. Mr. Speaker, when is this coalition finally going to target criminals and not.
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, there they go again, Conservatives trying to stoke fear. If my colleague had actually read the amendments that are part of Bill C-21, they would have seen that we included a non-derogation clause specifically for Indigenous persons, Mr. Speaker, but they didn't read it, Mr. Speaker. Instead, they're just filibustering. They're just about a record of putting cuts to police budgets. They're just about weakening our borders. On this side of the House, Mr. Speaker, we're going to keep our communities safe by strengthening borders, by putting more resources into law enforcement, and by passing strong gun control laws.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, each time a criminal uses a firearm to commit a crime, it costs society $500 million. A study published by a criminology professor at University Laval says that homicide is the most expensive crime, costing $10 million per firearm used to kill someone. But instead of attacking the source of this scourge, the Liberal NDP Bloc Québécois would rather spend $200 million to buy back legally owned firearms. When are they going to stop these partisan games and actually protect Canadians' safety? The Honourable Minister. Once again, Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives, with their tough talk but lack of concrete action, are calling us out, but it is our government that is making the investments needed to support police forces. This morning with my colleagues in the Peel region, we announced that we would invest another $390 million to protect Canadians' security. And yet it is the government who cut that budget, and it is this government who is going to continue to protect and support our police forces. The Honourable Member for Dorval-Lachine-LaSalle. Mr. Speaker, the officials of the Canada Revenue Agency are working hard to provide important services to Canadians. The Government of Canada believes in the process of collective bargaining, and the best agreements are those that are reached around the table. Can the Minister of National Revenue tell us a bit about the agreement in principle that was reached? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague from Dorval-Lachine-LaSalle for her question. After many weeks of diligent work, the CRA reached an agreement in principle with the Union of Taxation Employees. We appreciate the patience and understanding of Canadians during this period, because it's around the negotiating table that the best agreements are reached. These agreements are fair, competitive, and reasonable, and we are deeply grateful to the officials who work very hard to serve Canadians, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are fed up of being laughed at by the Prime Minister, who goes on taxpayer-funded trips, while other normal Canadians have trouble paying their bills. Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister stop taking it easy and set the example by stopping spending recklessly all of our taxpayers' hard-earned money? The Honourable Government House Leader. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, the Prime Minister took a vacation with his family at Christmas time. That is indeed the case. And for the member across the way, if his position isn't it acceptable during Christmas? Is the Prime Minister allowed to take a vacation with his family? Is that reasonable? Or is it because the majority of the costs are for safety? Does the member think that the Prime Minister doesn't need a security service?
Member for Simcoe Grey.
Mr. Speaker, inflation remains at a 40-year high. Gas prices are unaffordable and intentionally being made worse. Under this government, housing costs have doubled. Seniors are having to sell their homes just to get by. Canadians struggle while the Prime Minister continues his jet-set ways. A couple days in New York with some celebs, a week in Jamaica with a Trudeau Foundation donor. It's a good life for anyone who doesn't have a country to run. Mr. Speaker, when is the Prime Minister going to stop his wannabe celebrity ways and get serious about the affordability crisis?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Speaker, the Conservatives continue to talk down the Canadian economy. But the reality is, Canada is the best country in the world and is coping better with the challenging global economic environment than any country anywhere on the planet. Our economy grew by 2.5% in the first quarter. Last month, we added 41,000 jobs. That means we have added 900,000 jobs since the pandemic. 129% of the jobs recovered in Canada compared to 115% in the U.S., Mr. Speaker.
Well, member for Saskatoon Grasswood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 8 years of this Liberal government, Canadians are now desperate. Many are struggling to decide which bill to pay first. This government has driven up the cost of living, making everything more expensive. Vacations, well, they're simply out of the question for most Canadians, but yet this Prime Minister spends enormous amount of taxpayer dollars taking luxurious foreign vacations. Here's a novel idea, Mr. Speaker. Would this Prime Minister consider staying home to actually help Canadians?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
You know, Mr. Speaker, what Canadians are desperate about is the gloom and doom and the talking down of Canada and the Canadian economy. They are relentlessly hearing from the grouchy members opposite. Now, the reality is Canada is a fantastic country, and Canada is doing really well. Mr. Speaker, inflation in March was 4.3%. It has been going down for 9 consecutive months, Mr. Speaker, and the Bank of Canada is forecasting it will be at 3% in the summer and below 3% by the end of the year. Canada is recovering remarkably, Mr. Speaker.
If I can have your attention, please. Order. Just want to remind the honourable members, we're in Parliament, and calling each other names really doesn't help our argument on either side. The honourable member for Calgary Skyview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, over 100 wildfires are burning in Alberta right now, threatening communities and forcing nearly 30,000 people from their homes. The situation has become so severe that the provincial government has declared a province-wide state of local emergency. While we are expecting more favorable conditions over the next few days, this will likely continue to be a major crisis. Can the minister update this House on the government's conversations with Alberta and what is being done to help those affected?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, let me thank my honourable colleague from Calgary Skyview for his question on behalf of the people of Alberta. And if I may, I would like to express my gratitude to the firefighters, first responders, emergency management individuals, Indigenous leadership, right across Alberta. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are there for each other. We've been working very closely with the province of Alberta throughout this event. This afternoon, we received a formal request for assistance, and we have been working all weekend to identify the appropriate resources. Mr. Speaker, if I may, I'd also like to point out that this week is Emergency Preparedness Week, and we urge all Canadians, know your risks, be prepared.
The honourable member for Timmins James Bay.
The Human Rights Tribunal ordered that this government ensure Indigenous children are given access to care and services they deserve in a timely manner, upholding Jordan's principle. But this government is evading that obligation by simply refusing to pay. We have had child therapists, speech pathologists who've been pushed to the point of bankruptcy because the government refuses to pay the bill. The backlog in one of the latest cases is $450,000 in deadbeat non-payments. These are children's lives we're talking about. Why is this government ignoring its legal obligations under Jordan's principle?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member opposite for this question, and it's a really important one. Jordan's Principle continues to offer important services all across Canada, but it's important for us to focus on the investments that we're making for children across Canada. That's why I'm really happy to talk about the $43 billion largest Indigenous settlement that we've had to make sure that we're getting it right when it comes to children moving forward. And I continue to want to work with the member opposite to make sure that we're not only supporting Jordan's Principle, but also supporting the children of Indigenous communities all across Canada. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This weekend, Liberals overwhelmingly supported a policy motion that is very similar and consistent with Motion 76 put forward by my colleague, the Honourable Member for Kitchener Centre. This is extremely positive news, but the Prime Minister is quoted as saying it would, despite the support of his party, never be a priority for the Prime Minister because he says the fact is there is no consensus. This motion calls for a national, nonpartisan citizens' assembly to find that consensus. Is consensus defined by the Prime Minister as including himself? Otherwise, there's no consensus?
The Honourable Minister for Intergovernmental Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, our government will continue to look for ways to increase Canadians' participation in the democratic process. We have a number of suggestions. The NDP and the Prime Minister, the leader of the NDP and the Prime Minister in the Sublime Conference Agreement agreed to a number of elements that will improve access to voting. We're working on those kind of issues constructively, Mr. Speaker, and our government has made it clear that there is no consensus in terms of the kind of reform that my honourable colleague is talking about, and we're focusing on issues that matter to Canadians in terms of affordability, fighting against climate change, and other issues that we think are very important.
Here, here. Comme il est 15h15, conformément à l'ordre adopté le...
It being 3:15, pursuant to order made on Thursday, June 23rd, 2022, the House will now proceed to the taking of the deferred recorded division on the motion of Mr. Cooper relating to the business of supply.